Are different to a normal employment status. So could you just explain what that is and what you think should happen?
Police constables aren't employees. They hold a different status than that, the Crown servants. So in relation to the misconduct that goes alongside that, it's far more difficult to actually dispense with an officer's services than it is for every other employee. What goes alongside that, obviously police officers can't strike, so there are other benefits that go alongside that. As we're all aware, both the Metropolitan Police Commission and others have stated that the issue of having legally qualified chairs is causing a problem, and that the head of each organisation should be able to decide who should be working in that organisation. So I know the government have said that there's going to be a report commissioned in relation to this. It needs to be done quickly, in my view. We need to very quickly identify if there is a better way of dealing with these issues. The statistics don't necessarily bear out all the claims that are being made on occasion. So we do need to have a definitive, this is the situation and this is what we need to do. I know there is certainly police force around the country, around the world, where officers have a different status, such as employee, and I'm sure that is one part of what will be looked at moving forward.
And that's the internal review that the Home Secretary talked about yesterday.
Yes.
In the Chamber. And do you know anything further about that? Do you know about the timescale or who's doing it?
I don't.
No, OK. All right, thank you very much. Diane Abbott.
I wanted to ask you about balancing priorities, but I just wanted to follow up briefly on some of the points my chair raised. And in response to her questioning, you said that sexism is a societal problem. I can't think of a case where in the wider society somebody's been convicted of 24 cases of rape. Are you sure you were saying that there is nothing particular about policemen and their attitude to issues of gender? Are you sure?
I can't speak for every police officer, obviously, but certainly the vast majority of police officers do not hold that sort of view and approach. But we have seen plenty of serious sexual offences happening elsewhere. It is worse when it's a police officer. I fully accept that, because police have special powers. Police have a role in society that no officer should ever be allowed to serve as a police officer with this sort of mentality. I fully accept that. But what I can't accept is that every officer has that mindset.
Just on the culture in the police force, one of the striking things about the David Carrick case, that over 20 years, nobody ever thought there was anything that they could report. He was called Bastard Carrick. That must have been for a reason. And one of the striking things is that there was no one around him that saw that his attitude to women was problematic, and his senior officers promoted him. Doesn't that speak to a culture in the Met?
This is obviously one issue on top of a number of issues that we've seen with the Metropolitan Police Force previously. Why this individual wasn't identified earlier, either by colleagues or by senior officers or through systems and IT, I really don't know, and that's what we...
Isn't it? That's why he wasn't identified.
We can point to plenty of officers who've been identified by other officers for wrongdoing, for having the wrong approach to policing. So it's not universal.
Just last point on the Carrick case. You were saying in response to my chair, trying to rebut this idea of institutional sexism, that, you know, you're recruiting all these women, police officers and women chief constables and all the rest of it. In my experience, very often in an organisation which is institutionally sexist or institutionally racist, in order to get to the top of that organisation, you have to internalise the culture. So having women chief constables does not mean that you cannot have a force which remains institutionally sexist.
I accept your point, and I think I've already stated that I believe there are significant issues with misogyny and sexism that need to be rooted out by policing as soon as possible.
This is Sky News. You've been watching coverage of the Home Affairs Committee on policing priorities. This is regarding the Met Police's handling of alleged sexual offences involving its staff. We'll have more on that throughout the morning here on Sky News. But in the meantime, this is Ian King Live, an hour of business and economic news from the heart of the city. Now, there are signs this morning that the UK may be past the very worst of rising prices. The annual rate of consumer price inflation eased to 10.5% in December, down from 10.7% in November, but still way above the Bank of England's central target of 2%. Well, the Office for National Statistics said the reduced cost of petrol had led to the decline, along with cheaper clothing and footwear. Well, joining me now is Paul Dales. He's Chief UK Economist at Capital Economics. Paul, welcome to you. Can we definitively say now that that inflation has peaked?
I think so, yes. The peak was back in October at 11.1, and we've had 2 consecutive months of inflation declining. So we are past the peak, but as you said yourself, we're still at 10.5%. That's a long way from 2%, where it should be. And I don't think we'll get back to 2% perhaps until late in 2024. So there's a long way to go, and the inflation fight is not yet won.
Yes, we're showing a chart of what's been going on over the last 6 months. I mean, what's really striking, though, is that it's food inflation that's doing the damage now at a 45-year high. I mean, petrol prices have been easing for 6 months now.
Yes, there's ups and downs within the CPI basket. So petrol prices falling is putting a bit more money back into people's pockets, but then they just have to spend it somewhere else at the moment, which is food prices rising. Now, I do think there is some good news here. So we have been observing at Capital Economics that global agricultural commodity prices have been declining quite sharply over the last 6 to 9 months. And that will eventually feed into lower prices for food in the supermarkets, but it's just going to take maybe another 6 months or so.
Well, that's encouraging news, Paul. Well, I mean, I guess more worrying is the fact that core inflation was unchanged at 6.3%. I mean, that's the element that strips out food and energy prices. I mean, that is a real concern, isn't it? Because that sort of indicates that there is an entrenched element of inflation in the system.
That's exactly right. Yes, that's what you might call the more persistent part of inflation, which means that it's probably going to stay around for a bit longer. And that is a result of the economy actually holding up reasonably well, avoiding a recession last year, and the labour market and wage growth remaining quite strong. Now, this does mean that the Bank of England probably has further work to do. It's already raised interest rates to 3.5%. I think it's going to have to raise them further to at least 4.5% in order to try and prevent businesses from continuing to raise their prices so that inflation can get back down a bit quicker.
So on that basis, Paul, the next MPC meeting is on the 7th of February. You'd expect bank rate to go from 3.5% to 4% that day?
That's right. I think a 50 basis point increase or a half percentage point increase is what we are looking at. We are probably closer to the end of the interest rate hikes rather than expecting many more to come through. But I think the bank will want to see further signs that it has won the inflation fight with that core rate of inflation starting to decline before it stops raising interest rates.
Now, US inflation was at 6.5% in December. In Germany, it's down to 9.6% for that month. Why is it that inflation is somewhat stickier in the UK?
I think a lot of this has to do with what's happened to the UK's labour market since the pandemic. So a lot of workers in the UK decided that they no longer wanted to work. And what's that meant is that there's a shortage of workers here in the UK, which is putting more upward pressure on wage growth, which is propelling core inflation a little bit higher for longer in the UK. So unfortunately, it's just a situation that we haven't really got enough workers to do all the jobs that we need. And that's what's contributing to inflation being a bit stickier in the UK. And I guess to some extent, the recent strikes in the UK risk exacerbating that effect by pushing wage growth even higher.
All right. Lots more I wanted to ask you, Paul, but we're out of time, I'm afraid. Thanks for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
Now, this year is set to be a testing one for global regulatory enforcement and risk as policymakers and legislators jostle to address and curb the effects of crises such as the global pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and the ensuing energy and cost of living crises. Well, that's the top line of the annual Global Antitrust 10 Key Themes report published today by the law firm Freshfields Bruckhouse Derringer, which also highlights ongoing challenges posed by the green transition and digital transformation. Joining me now is Michelle Davis. She's Global Co-Head of Tech, Media and Telecoms and Antitrust and Foreign Investment Partner at Freshfields. Michelle, welcome to you. There were an unprecedented number of transactions unwound or scrapped last year due to national security concerns. Do you see more of the same this year?
Absolutely, Ian. I know we're in a very new world when it comes to additional scrutiny of transactions. Last year, it was pretty unprecedented in the number of transactions that were blocked or had conditions imposed on them because of national security concerns. We had the first year of the UK National Security and Investment Act. And when that was first mooted, when Kwasi Kwarteng was still on the front benches, he said that prohibitions would be an absolute last resort. But in the first year of that act alone, we've seen 5 prohibitions. When you bear in mind that in the previous regime, we had 20 years of legislation and not a single prohibition. So direction of travel very firmly against more protectionism and more concern about certain types of investment, and particularly Chinese investment.
Absolutely. And I guess we have to see this in the broader context of deglobalization, do we?
Absolutely. And, the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, the continuing crisis around cost of living and energy, governments are very much concerned about looking after their own. And so some of these things are not just driven by national security in the traditional sense of, wanting to make sure that hostile countries, aren't put in a position where they could threaten security. It's things like economic security, energy security. These are all front of mind of regulators. And this is why we're seeing more and more enforcement. And, one authority that's played a very leading role in this is CFIUS, which is the US Foreign Investment Authority. And not only have they been encouraging global countries to bring their own foreign investment regimes, one of the new trends we're also seeing is a move towards policing outbound investment. So, for example, I spoke to a CFIUS official recently whose view was very much there's no point in us sort of closing the doors to investment in the US if US companies are able to go and invest in China, and we have to be concerned about technology transfer as part of those arrangements. Europe is also cottoning on to this, so this is something that we have to look at going forward, that there may be new controls on outbound investment as well.
That's really quite concerning. If one takes a very sort of UK-focused view on that, potentially does that mean UK might not be enjoying the sort of capital flows that it has done over recent decades?
Well, the UK, it's an interesting one, right? Because, we are a country that is in desperate need of investment in infrastructure, in green technology. So the government has quite a difficult balancing act to follow here. They have been very clear that their new regime, Britain remains open for business. We want to attract the right sort of investment. But lots of investors are, rightly questioning whether this regime is really still open to investment, and whether actually we're going to find a situation where UK investors may be, front of line over international investors. What I would say, though, is, in the year that we've had the regime in force, you're talking about 1,000 transactions a year who are being affected by this. The vast majority have, gone through the process, have been cleared within 30 days, all very simple, very straightforward. But it is those minority of transactions that do end up in these extended reviews. And those are certainly giving investors call for, concern as to whether, it is worth pursuing some of these transactions. But it's not just a UK point. There are over 100 countries that have foreign investment laws these days. Europe has just introduced a new regime in relation to foreign subsidies. I think countries, and this is part of this globalization theme that we're hearing a lot about in Davos, it is just sort of looking after your own country first and making sure that, foreign investment isn't going to result in local investment and local sovereignty being impacted.
Michelle, we don't have an awful lot of time left, but I wonder briefly whether you could sum up what the year holds for tech regulation. Do you expect the heat to be continued to be turned up on the tech companies?
This is the first year that we're going to see the European Commission's Digital Market Act in action. That is an act which was pulled together very quickly, some would say rushed through. And I think there are going to be a lot of sort of substantive and procedural issues with how that new legislation is going to operate. It was something that, maybe people hadn't anticipated, just the complications of bringing in new regulation at this time. So that is certainly something people will be watching closely. And lots of other countries are keeping a close eye on developments, and we may well see copycat legislation. They're certainly trying to introduce some legislation in the US, although that is meeting a bit of a challenge in the bipartisanship that we're seeing in the US at the moment. But there's definitely more to come, and it is just part of this general theme of a more complex regulatory landscape for companies to have to navigate.
OK, Michelle, got to leave it there, I'm afraid. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks very much, Ian.
Some other business news stories for you now. And Smiths Group, the FTSE 100 engineering combine, said this morning that it expects sales growth this year to be better than expected. The company, whose products include airport security scanners, advanced electronic components, industrial seals and fluid management systems, said it expects to grow sales this year by at least 7%, thanks to both selling more products and price increases to offset cost inflation. Smiths, whose components were used in NASA's Mars Perseverance rover, cited particularly strong growth in its detection business, and in John Crane, its seals and flexible couplings business. Shares are currently up by some 3% so far today. Pearson, the educational publisher, said this morning that its profits for 2022 would be better than expected, thanks to an upsurge in people seeking better qualifications and looking to improve their skills. The FTSE 100 company, which has pivoted in recent years from being the world's biggest publisher of school textbooks to being a leading supplier of online services, said it expected full-year operating profits to come in at around £455 million, compared with market expectations of £446 million. Well, Pearson, which also owns the exam board Edexcel, said its assessment business had enjoyed an 8% rise in sales, with sales of English language learning products and tests rising by 24%. The shares are up by nearly 1% right now. And WH Smith said this morning that the continued resumption of air and rail travel had lifted sales in the second half of last year. The company, which has more than 530 high street stores, 170 outlets at UK airports and more than 270 sites at railway stations, said sales in the 20 weeks to last Saturday were up 41% on the previous year and up 20% on the same period in the pre-pandemic years. Well, WH Smith, which also has more than 600 units outside the UK, said its sales growth internationally was stronger still. The shares are ahead by 1.5% right now. Now, another sign this morning of the sense of caution among global investors, with news that global venture capital investment has fallen to its lowest level since the second quarter of 2019. The latest KPMG Private Enterprise Venture Pulse report shows that global venture capital investment dropped for the fourth consecutive quarter at the end of 22, with investment in Europe falling to a two-year low. Well, joining me now is Connor Moore. He's head of KPMG Private Enterprise Emerging Giants Network. Connor, first of all, thank you for joining me at such a very unsociable hour your time. I don't know whether you've gone to bed yet or have just got up very early morning, but it's good to see you nonetheless. What do you put this down to? Is this, I guess, the general, sort of malaise in investment sentiment generally?
Yeah, Ian, I think there's general sentiments around the world with probably some differences when one goes from one region to the other. Obviously, for the last 2 or 3 years, where we've had some pretty high levels of investment, I think there's been a level of frothiness that, looking back on it now, we'd all think that valuations were probably too high and certain deals were getting done that probably shouldn't have gotten done. I think some of us were getting enamored with business models that were focused entirely on revenue growth as opposed to profitability. So I think a little bit more of sanity has come back into the market. But then you layer on top of that the Ukraine crisis, you layer on top of that the energy crisis, you layer on top of that inflation, etc. So I think that speaks to that general level of malaise that you referred to.
Before we get too depressed, though, Connor, it's worth pointing out 2022 was still the third highest year on record for fundraising.
Yeah, no, that's very true, Ian. Like we're talking, if you go back to the early days of the pandemic, Q4 2022 would still be a record investment quarter. So it's not all bad news. And clearly there's still a significant amount of capital available to be deployed. I just think the speed at which it's being deployed and maybe the skepticism and diligence that is coming alongside that deployment is just taking longer for that capital to be invested, and it's being invested at lower valuations.
And how much of that capital is there out there waiting to be invested, and what sort of things are investors looking for?
I think, I don't have an exact number, but there's billions and billions of dollars available to be invested from many different sources. I think the key thing that we've seen coming out of 2021 into 2022 is investors are looking for business models that can scale and be profitable. You don't have to be profitable today, but you need to have some story that you can support, that within some period of time you can turn your business into one that's profitable. I think the days of sort of making losses into perpetuity that some business models had back in 2021, I think those days are over. So investors are very, very focused on profitability.
That's healthy though, isn't it, Conor? I mean, obviously we've gone through 15 years of near zero interest rates and massive misallocation of capital. This is a healthy thing, isn't it?
Oh, it's not all bad news. No, I think if you were a CEO of a high growth startup right now looking to raise money, you might think it's a bad thing. But I do agree that taking some of this frothiness out of the market and people realizing that we were just in a world of completely unsustainable valuations, that part of it is actually a good thing.
Now, the IPO market has been pretty subdued, and there's little prospect of it picking up in the next few months at least. Does this mean that VCs are going to have to hold on to investments for longer?
Yeah, I think it will. I think we referred to in the report, I think optimistically, maybe there's windows that open up in the second half of 2023, but if some of the crises that I referred to earlier on get any worse, that could be pushed into 2024. So, yeah, VC firms, depending where they are in their sort of 7-year fund cycle, a lot of them will have to sit tight before they get the returns that they were expecting. But again, a lot of these firms are firms that have been doing this for 40 or 50 years, and they've seen these cycles, and I'm sure they'll be able to navigate through them.
All right, Conor, we've got to leave it there. It's a great report, really interesting reading. Thanks very much for joining me to talk about it.
Thank you, Ian.
Now, with the cost of living crisis continuing to bite, more and more people are looking to reduce their borrowing costs, for example, by moving to a lower interest rate or by getting extra time to pay. Well, a Swedish startup called Anyfin seeks to make that easier with technology and claims to have saved its customers 68 million euros to date. Today, it announces it's completed a 30 million euro funding round, taking its total equity fundraising to date to 106 million euros. Well, joining me now is the chief executive and co-founder of Anyfin, Mikhail Hussein. Mikhail, welcome to you. I mean, how does the app work?
Well, Anyfin is a debt management assistant. So the way that the product works is you, as a consumer, can refi any unsecured debt that you have by just taking a picture of either the monthly servicing statement, typically a credit card bill, or connect your account and send that to us. And in a matter of seconds, we give you an offer for a better rate. And today, that on average has been a saving of 50% that we can offer consumers. One click on that, and we move everything in the background, and you carry less cost for your debt going forward.
And how do you make money?
Well, we do make money like everybody else here, but because we have technology behind us, because we sort of have a very modern platform, we can operate in a slightly different cost base, meaning that we can still have good margins, but actually take less from the consumer. So the way that it works is we take that credit one for one, and we function as a bank. So we borrow money and we lend that out, but to a much lower rate to the consumer. So that, and being able to leverage data and predict risk, plus, to be honest, being less greedy than many other out there, but still sustaining a healthy business model, is how we make money.
So your margins are lower than, for example, the providers of other consolidation loans?
So yes, I mean, I can't speak to the other, but in typical, like, we are able to, lower the cost with more than 50%, right? Which means that, yes, we are happy with in some regard with that, yes.
Now, you're currently in Sweden.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, you're currently in Sweden, Norway, Finland and Germany. Any plans to launch in the UK?
I mean, if you look at sort of what we can do and what we've been able to actually accomplish across the 4 markets, and it's a situation that is present all across Europe, to be honest, including the UK. Well, with overpriced debt, with long tenures and debt that you really can't get out of, and in the cards, not for the imminent year, but UK is definitely an interesting model, and it shows the same dynamic with sort of overpricing towards consumer debt for sure.
In the markets where you're currently trading then, what does a typical customer look like? Is there such a thing as a typical customer?
Well, if you look at consumer debt, it actually spans across a fairly wide spectrum and can look very different. So, but our average consumer is typically a woman in her 30s with a young family who have either purchased something online or through a credit card or taking a loan, maybe a home reno loan, but is of a fairly stable nature. And typically, the one thing that they have in common is that they pay way too much for their current financing arrangement.
Now, you're not the first Swedish fintech that we've had on the programme. We've had Sebastian Simiakowski from Klarna on a number of times. What makes Sweden such a good place to set up a fintech?
Well, I mean, by now it has a bit of a history. I've been working in fintech myself for 15 years here. So now we sort of count ourselves as the sort of probably the 3rd or the 4th generation. There is So there is somewhat of a culture around it, but the other thing is it's a very small country in itself with a small domestic market, which means that once you enter and once you sort of start your business, you start to think international from day one. We've had our product on the market for a bit more than 5 years right now, and we've already internationalized to 4 markets. And I think if you come from somewhere else across Europe where the domestic market might be a bit larger, it's sort of easy to focus on that in the beginning rather than to think just international and in the way that we've done. So that the talent and makes it into a good ground to actually to create a fintech business.
All right, Mikhail, we're out of time, I'm afraid. Hope to speak to you again in future. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Ian.
Still to come here on Ian King Live. We're going to have a look at how the markets are doing this Wednesday morning. Don't go away.
Thomas Peter, and I'm Sky's climate change correspondent. The UK is a world leader in wind power. Power! Power! People! It's part of the Congo Basin rainforest, which is such an important ecosystem. It's known as the lungs of Africa. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. She doesn't really enjoy speaking to the press, and it wasn't clear right up until the last moment that she was going to sit down with me.
I might be just very naive, but I do believe that change is possible, otherwise we wouldn't be climate activists.
I'm confident for the last 30 years we have known how bad it is. I'm not here to apologize, I'm here to fight for the next step.
You can see just the piles and piles of stuff, these sofas and people's desks and children's books, and you can see inside this home here people trying to sort out their home. It's just been devastating.
I think everything's at stake. The future of our planet, the future of the beauty around us, the future of you and me.
Well, the oil price surged last night on rising expectations for demand as China reopens after COVID lockdowns. A barrel of Brent crude will currently... we haven't got it at the moment. I can tell you it was around $86 a barrel the last I checked, so it's hanging on to yesterday's gains. On the equity markets, well, it was a largely positive session in the Asia-Pacific region. As you can see there, all the main indices in positive territory. The showstopper, really, the Nikkei up in the top left-hand corner of the screen there, up by 2.5%, and that was after the Bank of Japan stuck to its ultra-low interest rate policy. Well, in Europe, stocks are trading largely to the upside this morning on the back of some encouraging trading updates. Only the DAX in Germany in negative territory right now. The Dutch chip supply, ASM International, is probably the pick of the bunch on continental Europe right now. The share's 8.25% ahead in Amsterdam right now on a trading update. Here in London, the FTSE 100 is up a sixth of 1% right now, with support being lent from some of the mining heavyweights. In terms of percentage gainers, though, in the blue chip index, well, the biggest one, or one of them, is Smiths Group, which I mentioned earlier. Very strong trading update from them. The share's up 2.5%. Meanwhile, British Land has benefited from a supportive broker note this morning. The share's up 1.25%. Meanwhile, Burberry put out a Christmas trading update this morning. The share's currently 2% to the good there. We'd love to have you on Burberry on the programme if any of you are watching. Outside the FTSE, well, Greggs is another stock benefiting from broker support this morning. The shares are ahead by 1.5% there. But TI Fluid Systems, the shares down nearly 13% there following a profits warning. On the foreign exchange markets, well, the big story, I mentioned the Bank of Japan a moment ago. It's all been about the Japanese yen. It's fallen by 2.5% against the dollar on that Bank of Japan statement. The pound, meanwhile, well, it's higher on the inflation figures against the greenback at least. It's 0.2% higher against the dollar. Meanwhile, it's lower, very slightly, against the euro. Well, joining me today is Melanie Baker. She's senior economist at Royal London Asset Management. Melanie, good to see you this morning. Bank of Japan, it's complicated, but it's really important, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is. It's become much more exciting to watch. Obviously, the Bank of Japan hadn't really changed anything in a very long time. And now there's a real possibility that we see some significant change from the Bank of Japan this year in terms of their monetary policy settings. Investors are being really wrong-footed by the BOJ, aren't they? Because first of all, it hinted that they were tightening monetary policy, and today they've said they're sticking to their guns. So the previous meeting, yes, we did have a bit of change. So they raised the cap on their 10-year yield target, and we've seen a lot of market pressure against that target. So there was some built-up risk, I think, and feeling that they might further have to change that cap on their target band again. And some probability they might even abandon yield curve control altogether. That hasn't happened. I think that's something that's a higher probability for later in the year.
I mean, we've talked an awful lot over recent years about quantitative easing, Bank of England, the Fed, the ECB, all buying government bonds. The Bank of Japan has done it to the nth degree,
Absolutely.
hasn't it?
It's a huge outlier, which I think is part of the reason we have seen all that market pressure in Japan. I think the other important thing is that the background for inflation as well has changed in Japan. You know, it's not just that everybody else is hiking, but we have got higher inflation in Japan too. It's a sort of fundamental reason why people are now looking at the BOJ and thinking that they're going to have to change this at some point.
Good time for a visit to Japan for anyone that's never been there. I mean, the yen's on its back, isn't it? Yeah.
I think as we go through the rest of this year, the important things are going to be watching Kuroda. So Kuroda will step down in April. Who replaces him? There generally seems to be an expectation we'll get an announcement on that in coming weeks. And then the spring wage rounds as well. So what happens there will then affect the probability of further change from the Bank of Japan later this year. So plenty to watch in Japan.
There really is. Now, we got disappointing GDP numbers out of China yesterday, and yet it's reopening. People are really being quite positive now.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the data did actually surprise a little bit on the upside. It wasn't quite as bad as expected yesterday. Some of the monthly data, for example, we had in December. But yeah, we've had we had a huge change in backdrop in China with the abandonment of zero COVID tolerance policies. So yeah, growing expectation will have quite a strong bounce in Chinese growth this year.
How worried would you be that this injects more inflation into the global system?
That's the key thing I think investors are going to worry about. I worry about as an economist, right? It's how inflationary is the bounce back in China going to be? If this is mostly about consumer services, for example, the bounce back there, post-COVID disruption, then maybe it doesn't have to be quite so inflationary for the globe. If it's more
more sort of commodity intensive in terms of that recovery, then I'm going to be worrying a bit more. So how much of it is going to be about property? How much is going to be about infrastructure, for example? So the makeup of that Chinese recovery will matter, I think, for that story.
And that has implications right around the world. I mean,
Absolutely.
Equity investors, particularly in the US, seem to be getting very excited about the speed at which the Fed will start to cut interest rates, even doing so later this year. Do you think that's remotely likely?
That's definitely not in my central case. So yes, I've got more rate hikes from the Fed. I don't think they're very clearly signalling they're not done yet. I think rate cuts will be more of a story for next year, once the Fed are much more confident about the inflation story and once the economy has weakened. I'm still expecting some form of recession this year in the US. So I think it's a story for much further down the line. Far too early to get excited about cuts.
Well, look, it's been ages since we had you in the studio. Hopefully you'll be back soon to talk to us about that. Melanie, great to see you. Thank you. Now, the World Economic
your new home address at GHS Housing Estates from now to 31st January 2020. Make that move now this festive season to your new home address at GHS Housing Estates. From now to 31st January 2023, we are offering you an amazing 5% buyer's discount on all purchases on our expandable 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom detached homes at Cochrane Villa, Pokwase, just 5 minutes drive from the interchange. The Mayflower and the new Hazel Courts at Kuntusi, 20 minutes drive from Achimatamo. Beautiful homes in a serene and gated community with flexible payment plans available. Call us now on 0544 347 980 or 0544 347 981. GHS Housing Estates. View it, love it, own it.
Hi guys, this is your friend Uruj from SendWave. SendWave is a money transfer app that is used by people all over the world to send money to their loved ones in Africa. With SendWave, you can send money to Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And the best part is, SendWave is absolutely commission-free. Our exchange rates are excellent. You can see for yourself by checking them out on our website. So how do you use SendWave? SendWave is an app that you can download onto your phone from the App Store or Google Play Store. The app is free to download. After downloading it, just open the app and enter your name, email, and phone number. That's it. You're good to go. Make sure you use the promo code SR. S for Star, R for Radio. This promo code will give you £5 free credit to send to Africa on your first transaction. Your money will be delivered to your recipient within seconds. Feel free to call me on 0749 7377 647 at any time. I'll be happy to tell you all about SendWave and help you in any way I can. Remember to use the promo code SR for £5 free credit. Medasse.
Hi everyone, it's your girl BB Clemens, the author of How to Go From Employee to Entrepreneur and the host of your weekly business show, BB Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Starr Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Tune in to On Point here on Starr Radio UK with Empress Regina every Monday at 5 p.m. GMT. Looking forward to your company.
Are you looking for the fastest, reliable, and trustworthy door-to-door shipment company? Well, look no further. When was the last time your family received a shipment back in Ghana on time and in time? You are not sure? Well, we proud ourselves with being the fastest, reliable, and trustworthy shippers you can use. You are assured of a prompt pickup anywhere in the UK by our personnel. They also make sure your items are well packaged to get to its destination in time. When it comes to door-to-door shipment, look no further. Well, Lamb Shippers, contact us on 07939009321 or 07498911820. Or you can visit our website www.welllamp.co.uk. You can also drop us a mail info@welllamp.co.uk. @gmail.com. Well, lamb shippers, fast, reliable, and trustworthy.
While the others keep on talking, we keep on rocking.
It's your man. Bekutu, show them you got the cocoa set. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Harry Song, aka Mr. Songs. This is the Kingmaker Baba for the girls. We're here. This is Starr Radio. Don't go nowhere. UK, London. We they call them London for home. For here, we they call them London. And that's how you know. Just have fun and stay blessed.
Hi there, this is CJ Buckman, your life coach. And whenever I'm in London, I listen to Starr Radio UK right here. But guess what? You can listen to wherever you are.
The best radio show.
Broadcasting worldwide, online 24/7.
All around the world. In your car.
At work.
At home.
On your smartphone.
This is Starr Radio UK. Are you ready to turn it up?
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. And I'm feeling good. Hey there, this is Archie, and it is Starr Radio UK and the morning show.
This is Starr Radio UK. Starr Radio UK. This is Starr Radio UK.
Welcome.
Broadcasting worldwide, online 24/7.
Enlighten your day with Starr Radio.
Love for you runs deep. All of you makes my heart beat. You make a doubt they fade, Jesus, and that's what makes you great. You hold the world in.
Okay, and that is how I say a massive good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good dawn to you, wherever you might be on planet Earth. And another cold day here in London and in the UK as well, you know. But wherever you are, we want to welcome you to the Wednesday edition of the morning show. Today is the 18th day of January, the year 2023, with the time now 10:43 from the House of London. And I'm saying good morning to my team this morning, Mr. Olayomi, who is going to be right on air, and Mr. Francis Guy, my able producer. And I'm saying good morning to Felix all the way in Aberdeen. Captain Felix Tatar as well. Must say good morning to you. Bishop Adeshina, good morning. Pastor Momo, Anjana Dedeji, Aziz, Amayo, Moyua, Sir Moses. I hope you all doing very, very well. All protocol observed. Well, it's a Wednesday edition of the morning show. You know, we are always pressed with time with that. But hey, we're going to be having in-depth stories from Nigeria today because Olayomi is going to be live. So don't touch the dial, share the broadcast with your friends and loved ones and invite them to like our pages as well. Let me say good morning to my lovely wife Lottie and to all the family, all of you men, home and abroad. Amen. Good morning to you as well.
You make it all.
Mr. David Clocher, good morning. Ato Brown Eye. Ato Kwamina Brown Eye. I hope you are doing good.
What makes you great?
Okay, dokie do. Let's crack on. I'm going to bring you the coach of the day, the weather forecast will follow suit, then the travel update as well. Move on from there to have a look at some of the stories making the rounds across the globe, known as Global Trotting. Then at 11 o'clock, I bring you Mr. Olayomi. I'm going to be telling you lots of stories that is making the rounds in Nigeria today, bringing you in-depth analysis of it. And then from thence, we'll have a continual look at some of the other stories. At 12 o'clock, I'll take you straight to the House of Parliament for the Prime Minister's question time. There's lots happening, but more going to be coming your way. So let's crack on. Play in the background something from Edith Morrison, Great Are You, Lord. Now the quote for the day says, always remember that how you treat people determines your failure or success. How you treat people determines your failure or success. So how successful are you? It depends on how you are treating people. Holy, holy. Share the broadcast with your friends and loved ones and invite them to like our pages as well. Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Okay, let's move on straight to the weather front. It's quite nippy here. But what has the weather got in stock for us here in London and the southeast of England? Wherever you are too, you can share with us there. Okay, so for London and the southeast of England, this is how the weather is going to be for you. This afternoon, there will be plenty of winter sunshine with just some patchy cloud around, remaining dry and clear into the evening. And this evening as well, we'll start with dry conditions and clear skies. For all, the second half of the night, we'll see patchy cloud building from the west, but it should stay dry with just the chance of a shower. Top temperature 5 degrees, the lowest -3, UV level low, pollution low, sunset 16:25, sunrise for tomorrow morning 07:57 hours. And that brings us to the end of the weather forecast.
Love for you runs deep.
Bring the time now to 10:46 from the House of London.
All of you makes my heart.
The Wednesday edition of the morning show. Let's take a quick break and I'll bring you the travel update. Stay tuned, don't you go away. Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London.
Make that move now, this festive season, to your new home address at GHS Housing Estates. From now to 31st January 2023, we are offering you an amazing 5% buyer's discount on all purchases on our expandable 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom detached homes at Cochrane Villa, Pokwase, just 5 minutes drive from the interchange. The Mayflower and the new Hazel Courts at Kuntusi, 20 minutes drive from Achimatamo. Beautiful homes in a serene and gated community with flexible payment plans available. Call us now on 0544 347 980 or 0544 347 981. GHS Housing Estates. View it, love it, own it.
This is Starr Radio UK.
Yes, keep your eyes on the roads. Keep your eyes on the roads. I'll keep you navigated. I promise I'll be on the Starr Radio travel update that comes to you every weekday from 10:40. Coming at 10:48. So what's your travels like this morning? Okay, so on your travel this morning, here in the UK. On the underground this morning, the district line has got severe delays between Tennham Green and Richmond due to an earlier signal failure at Ganisbury. Tickets are valid on local buses and South Western Railway. Good service on the rest of the line. Now, Jubilee line has also got minor delays due to train cancellations. That aside, all the others have got good service. London Tram Link, London DLR, good service there. But London Overground has got minor delays between Wilson Junction and Richmond due to an earlier signal failure at Ganisbury. Good service on the rest of the routes. Now moving on straight to the major roads in London. A4, A40 and Central London Red routes have all got closures. That aside, A1 and A13 has also got serious delays, so if you can avoid it, avoid that. However, all the others have got good service there. Now, when it comes to the river bars this morning, I can tell you assuredly good service there. The London Cable Car has also got good service. To the final segment of the travel updates, and that is the National Rail. What has the National Rail got in stock for us this morning? So on the National Rail this morning, Gatwick Express has got minor delays, Great Western Railway minor delays, Mersey Rail minor delays, Scott Rail minor delays, Southern minor delays, Thameslink and Transport for Wales minor delays. Island Line has got special service. Southwestern Railway has got severe delays, so please check before you leave. All the others have got good service there. So on that note, as I do say, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good dawn to you wherever you might be on planet Earth. Enjoy your commute for today, but you know what? Continue to keep those eyes on the roads.
Make that move now this festive season to your new home address at GHS Housing Estates. From now to 31st January 2023, we are offering you an amazing 5% buyer's discount on all purchases on our expandable 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom detached homes at Cochrane Villa, Pokwase, just 5 minutes drive from the interchange. The Mayflower and the new Hazel Courts at Kuntusi, 20 minutes drive from Achimatamo. Beautiful homes in a serene and gated community with flexible payment plans available. Call us now on 0544 347 980 or 0544 347 981. GHS Housing Estates. View it, love it, own it.
Welcome back to the program. It is Starr Radio UK. It is your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. And now let's move on to look at some of the stories making the rounds across the globe. And as I said, it is the Wednesday edition of the morning show. And you know that we are always pressed with time when it comes to that. But hey, just stay tuned and don't even think of touching the dial at all, because we got more going to be coming your way, especially those of you who listen to us from Nigeria, picking all the stories from Nigeria. I can tell you assuredly that this morning Mr. Olayomi Koiki is on and is going to be telling you more about what is happening in Nigeria today. So stay tuned and don't you go away. It's going to be his maiden edition for the year 2023. And then this evening as well, a big announcement coming on this afternoon telling you about what is going to happen today on the Niger Voices this evening. So, you know, we've got a package for you. So stay tuned and don't even think of touching the dial. Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Okay, now when it comes to some of the stories making the rounds across the globe, well, Ukraine Interior Ministry leadership killed in a crash. Now, Ukraine's interior minister, his deputy, and another official are among 18 killed in the crash. It says a black morning for Ukraine, Zelensky is saying. And the potential jurors find Musk smart or off his rocker. He could be ordered to pay billions of dollars in damages if he loses the fraud lawsuit over a tweet. Well, those are some of the stories making around the well-oldest person. Sister Andre dies age 118. Now, 50 minutes to defend yourself against the death penalty. Iran's courts are convicting protesters after fast-track trials that activists say are grossly unfair. So you got 50 minutes to defend yourself. If not, you'll be hanged or killed. So how do you what can you say within 15 minutes to convince somebody to leave you alone? Well, more going to be coming your way from there. So Starr Radio. Okay. Now, petrol prices drop, but food keeps inflation high. The overall rate of price rises slowed to 10.5% in December, but dairy and sugar costs grew. Well, sweet tooth for the Christmas. And then Sergeant says gender reform row will go to court. Scotland's First Minister says the courts will be asked to rule on whether the UK government can block the reforms. Well, they are a government on their own. Okay, let's see what happens there. The Church of England bishops refuse to back gay marriage. The bishops will recommend that prayers for God's blessing for gay couples be adopted. All right then. Okay. And clash looms over plans to scrap EU laws. Thousands of UK laws are due to expire automatically at the end of this year, prompting warnings from MPs. Okay, so we're going to be bringing you more on that front once we come back to that. But when it comes to Nigeria, well, now police presence at Emefele's residence home stirs controversy. I said a court ruled that he should be left alone. However, well, we don't know whether he's out of the country or is back into the country, but that's information coming through there. The federal government borrowing to import fuel, says a minister. 1 billion spent to recover territories seized by terrorists. That's what Buhari is saying. And what has that yielded to? What has that yielded to? Have they been able to recover some territories, or are these Boko Haram and all these insurgents going on kidnapping and killing people? Well, more will be coming your way. Why are you killing Christians in Nigeria? Trump asks Buhari. Well. And INEC chairman Yakubu says logistics major problem in conducting elections. Well, he says that they've distributed all the necessary logistics. But that's for the question that we've been asking all along, that do you think this election is going to hold or not? It's all coming away from Starr Radio UK. It is your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. 5 minutes to the top of the hour at the time, the morning show, the program. There's more going to be coming your way from Nigeria once we have Mr. Olayomi Koiki on as well. Libya donates basic commodities to Tunisia. Interesting. A convoy of 96 trucks carrying sugar, oil, flour and rice passed the Ras Jdir Bridge on Tuesday. That's a country that is in the midst of war. I mean, giving. That's quite an interesting one. Can you just imagine if President, the late leader, brother Muammar Gaddafi was around? You know, he was calling for the unity of Africa, where we didn't need to go to the West or the advanced countries to say, we want to get some money from you, some loan that comes with all the what sanctions and all those rules and laws with it. But what? We cut our nose to spite our faces, and that's what we are enjoying. Zimbabwe opposition activists arraigned in court for unlawful gathering. Some of the stories making the rounds there. Starr Radio UK. In Ghana as well, new bonds under domestic debt exchange program potentially worthless. Senior Hosi is also saying there. And then ex-director of David Ajayi Associates sues company over unfair dismissal. Individual bondholders forum to meet finance minister over debt exchange program. Well, it's coming your way from Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. One of the stalls of the National Cathedral, Reverend Doug Hayward Mills has said that Ajayi London National Cathedral job. How said David Ajayi London National Cathedral job? He's talking about that, but we're telling you more about that. Information coming through was that he has withdrawn his membership of the the top hierarchy, or those in the secretariat trying to see to the building of that edifice. Okay, National Cathedral, don't be part of blatant stealing, some judge to the clergy. Well, so that's making some of the clergymen decide to back out of it. Now, Takoradi PTC interchange construction halted over IMF conditions. Can you just imagine what is going to be happening there? The flood and every mess that will be going on there. But this is all coming your way from Starr Radio UK. It is your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Lots more going to be coming your way from there. But for now, enjoy the program. I'm going to bring you some music after this commercial break, and then we continue with the show. We shall be having Mr. Olayomi Koiki joining us in the next few moments. So stay tuned and don't you go away. Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London.
Make that move now, this festive season, to your new home address at GHS House and Estates. From now to 31st January 2023, we are offering you an amazing 5% buyer's discount on all purchases on our expandable 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom detached homes at Cochrane Villa, Pokwase, just 5 minutes drive from the interchange. The Mayflower and the new Hazel Courts at Kuntusi, 20 minutes drive from Achimatamo. Beautiful homes in a serene and gated community with flexible payment plans available. Call us now on 0544 347 980 or 0544 347 981. GHS Housing Estates. View it, love it, own it.
Hi guys, this is your friend Uruj from SendWave. SendWave is a money transfer app that is used by people all over the world to send money to their loved ones in Africa. With SendWave, you can send money to Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And the best part is, SendWave is absolutely commission-free. Our exchange rates are excellent. You can see for yourself by checking them out on our website. So how do you use SendWave? SendWave is an app that you can download onto your phone from the App Store or Google Play Store. The app is free to download. After downloading it, just open the app and enter your name, email, and phone number. That's it. You're good to go. Make sure you use the promo code SR. S for Star, R for Radio. This promo code will give you £5 free credit to send to Africa on your first transaction. Your money will be delivered to your recipient within seconds. Feel free to call me on 0749 7377 647 at any time. I'll be happy to tell you all about SendWave and help you in any way I can. Remember to use the promo code SR for £5 free credit. Medasse.
God of heaven, let the earth together sing your praise. We will rise above the heavens, and with one voice sing our praise to you. Your turn, come on. The God of heaven, let the earth together sing your praise. We will rise.
This is Starr Radio. This is Starr Radio UK.
In your car, at home,
on your smartphone.
And with one voice, sing our praise to you. Sing, sing, come here. Everybody. The God of heaven. God of heaven. The earth. Together sing your praise. Together sing your praise. We will rise. Upon the heaven. Upon the heaven. And with one voice, sing our praise to you. One more time. Come here. The God of heaven. God of heaven. Let the earth. Together sing your praise. Together sing your praise forever. We will rise. Upon the heaven. And with one voice. We're going on. Hey. Everybody. God of heaven.
This is Starr Radio UK. This is Starr Radio UK.
You are listening to Starr Radio. Upon the heaven. Sing our praise to you. Everybody. God of heaven. Together. Sing your praise. We will rise. Upon the heaven. And with one voice. Everybody, come on. And with one voice. Sing our praise to you. Every tongue, every people. Sing our praise to you. Let America sing with one voice. Sing our praise to you. Let Ontario sing with one voice. Sing our praise to you. Let China sing with one voice. Sing our praise to you. Every tongue, every people. Sing our praise to you. And with one voice. Everybody, come on.
This is Starr Radio. This is Starr Radio
Can you give me
UK.
your praise like never before? With one voice. Yeah. With one voice. With one voice.
Well, something from CC Bedu. And he says, Kabiyesi, the God of heaven. And it is Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. I remain yours sincerely, the one and only. And as I normally will say, at times that gets bumpy, but wherever you are this morning, continue to keep your dials logged on Starr Radio UK. If you're standing, hold on to something. If you're sitting, come on, buckle up. Get yourself a hot or cold drink, whichever is appropriate, and let's take this journey. Not a journey to the unknown, but a journey to the known. Because we make sure that if it is making the headlines, from archaeology to zoology, from Accra to Zanzibar, we're going to bring it your way. So don't tag the dial. Share the broadcast with your friends and loved ones and invite them to like our pages. We should be having Mr. Olayomi Koiki joining in the next few moments to bring you details of some of the stories making the rounds there. Let me say good morning to Pel Doe. Hello, Pel. I hope you are doing very, very well. How is the family? But it's All Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. On a Wednesday morning, a very cold day here in London. Okay, let's take a quick commercial break, and once we come back, we should have Mr. Olayomi Koiki joining in. But let me say good morning to Janet Okain all the way in Ghana from the GHS Housing Company Limited, where there is an offer for you until the 31st of January. So how many days more do you have to see to it? A 5% discount for you in a very wild, serene area where lovely buildings have been put up there. So take advantage of that. See you in a bit.
Make that move now, this festive season, to your new home address at GHS Housing Estates. From now to 31st January 2023, we are offering you an amazing 5% buyer's discount on all purchases on our expandable 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom detached homes at Cochrane Villa, Pokwase, just 5 minutes drive from the interchange. The Mayflower and the new Hazel Courts at Kuntusi, 20 minutes drive from Achimatamo. Beautiful homes in a serene and gated community with flexible payment plans available. Call us now on 0544 347 980 or 0544 347 981. GHS Housing Estates. View it, love it, own it.
Hi guys, this is your friend Uruj from SendWave. SendWave is a money transfer app that is used by people all over the world to send money to their loved ones in Africa. With SendWave, you can send money to Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And the best part is, SendWave is absolutely commission-free. Our exchange rates are excellent. You can see for yourself by checking them out on our website. So how do you use SendWave? SendWave is an app that you can download onto your phone from the App Store or Google Play Store. The app is free to download. After downloading it, just open the app and enter your name, email, and phone number. That's it. You're good to go. Make sure you use the promo code SR. S for Starr, R for Radio. This promo code will give you £5 free credit to send to Africa on your first transaction. Your money will be delivered to your recipient within seconds. Feel free to call me on 0749 7377 647 at any time. I'll be happy to tell you all about SendWave and help you in any way I can. Remember to use the promo code SR for £5 free credit. Medasse.
Welcome back to the program. It is Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London, bringing the time now to exactly 8 minutes past the top of the hour. We should have Mr. Olayomi Koiki joining us in the next few moments, but just bear with us whilst we wait for him. All right then. Now some of the other stories that is making the rounds there that we're going to be looking at. The presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party, PRP, Kola Abiola, says he will deal decisively with secessionists if elected president. Also, what does it mean by that? Decisively? Is it going to be bringing them to the table so that they can talk, or as we say, jaw, and make look at the way forward? Well. As I said, we have Miss Olayomi Koiki on, but Miss Gold, let me say massive good morning to you. I hope you are doing very, very well. And I've not seen you since the New Year, right? Okay, so let me say a Happy New Year to you, Miss Gold. And I know now I've got my own man, Miss Olayomi Koiki, right on. And let's go to him in our North London studios where he is. And let me say, Yomi, good morning to you.
Well, it is a very good morning to you, and I hope you can hear me back in the studio.
Loud and clear.
A very good morning to you, Mr. Archie. Good morning to all our listeners and viewers from around the world, and welcome to the finest African and Caribbean radio station in London, as we are now countdown to the most important populous black station in the country, which is Starr Radio UK. We'll also be giving you all the feed that you need to know. But for now, I come back to you in the studio, and I say Happy New Year to all our listeners, and then also say kudos to the team that have been working behind the scene. But we're fully back again, and the year have just begun with the most important part of Africa, Nigeria. All eyes now on Nigeria.
All eyes on Nigeria. And thank you very much for joining it. Happy New Year to you, to the family. I know we've spoken behind the scenes, but officially on air, let's say Happy New Year. And I hope that you had a good time, and the children and the whole family are doing very well as well.
Yes, everyone is doing very well, and we give thanks.
Thank God. Okay, Miss Gold says Kola Abiola and Dupe Onitiri are working for Yoruba politicians. Okay, we'll be telling you more about those details in a moment, but wherever you are, don't you go away. Let's crack on, because it's a Wednesday edition of the morning show. We are always pressed with time. But now, police present at Emefiele's Abuja home stirs controversy. Now, we know that the court ruled that he should be left alone. Now, information that was coming through was that as to whether even he was out of the country or not, which we are not very, very sure of. So, why are the police in his residence? Are they protecting him from the DSS, or are they there to prepare so that if they see him, they arrest him? What is the story behind that?
Well, Emefiele has been in the news, and if you remember, we've been literally talking about him, before the end of last year, because it seems that, there was so much trouble on the hands of the CBN. CBN is just similar to Bank of England, so Emefiele heads the Nigerian Central Bank of Nigeria as of today. But there is a lot of controversy about him, during the Christmas period, but we've now been able to find out from the press release from the CBN that Emefiele was actually out of the country on annual leave. He's back in the country, and the problem has not changed. So that means that it seems that there is still issue surrounding whether Emefiele should be arrested or be left alone. But I'm not sure whether the President Muhammadu Buhari would allow such, because that will create a lot of problem in the country today, and likewise it will bring a lot of volatile to Nigeria as a country, globally. So a lot of people that are probably waiting that Emefiele will be arrested, I'm not seeing that happening anytime soon. So, but the headline says, there's a lot of police present at Emefiele's, residence in Abuja, and the reason for that is nothing more than the fact that Emefiele currently is going through a lot of problems. So the controversy that has surrounded the presence of the team of police at the Federal Capital Territory, home of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the armed police were numbering to about 10, were seen at about 8:30 p.m. yesterday at the Maitana Abuja home of the embattled governor of the Apex Bank. According to the credible source, the Nigerian police force told some of the papers on the ground that the presence of the police was in furtherance to Emefiele's expected appearance at the Federal High Court in Abuja today over $53 million judgment debt arising from the Paris Club refund.
Well, if they have evidence to that end, because why did the courts rule that he should not be touched, he should be left alone? I don't know why they are still going on. Well, they are saying that this is now for virtually another case, but not the sponsoring of terrorism and all that stuff. But we'll come to that. Let me acknowledge Kami Adewale. This is a Happy New Year, everyone, and Happy New Year to you, Kami. And Miss Gold also says Happy New Year to everyone, Yomi and Archie and all the viewers. So yes, Happy New Year to each and every one of you. But it is Starr Radio UK. It is your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Now, Yomi, still on that case. Now, why did the court rule that he should be left alone? And yet, unless of course this is a different case, like what the DSS seem to be doing when it comes to Nnamdi Kanu's case. Once the court rules that you have to, the person has been acquitted and everything, they say, oh, now we are going to find a new charge and then put it against him and then so hold on to him. Which we know that meanwhile they've not brought any new charges, preferred any new charges against him. So is it some other charges that is making them to pursue Emefiele?
Well, the confusion, as the CBN governors resumed duty, like I said earlier, on Monday afternoon, we saw the operatives of the state security services, invaded the headquarters of the CBN and took over the office of the embattled governor. There was also confusion that the Central Bank of Nigeria headquarters in Abuja as Emefiele resumed back on Monday. But in a statement signed by the DSS spokesman Peter Afunaya, I don't trust any of these department because remember that it was the same man that came out almost 10 p.m. after the assassination attempt on the lives of Chief Sunday Igboho. They thought he was dead, so they couldn't have anything to release until Chief spoke about 6 p.m. to BBC, and that literally forced the federal government to come out with boggles of lies. That they actually came in, because there were information that the house was being used for all kind of different reasons. But the spokesman for the DSS, Peter Afunaya, the secret police said the report are also fake and misleading. So the question now, like you said, what is the court saying? Why is the DSS after, Emefiele? Why is all this going on? Or is this just a kind of propaganda just to probably take us away from the reality, which is that, there is allegation against, the Central Bank of Nigeria of money laundering and terrorism financials?
I remember that, is it Dr. Obadia? Is it the one who died?
Yeah, the late Malachi Obadia.
Yeah, and he did mention that there are some lists, there are some people, some big hooks who he reckons that were sponsoring the terrorists and stuff like that. I don't know, because of that, that's why they took his life, or he died a natural death, whatever that is. We're not very, very sure of. Now, do you have any inclination that maybe he's one of the ones on that list?
Well, since we don't have, evidence, around such, but I remember very well, that he did also mention, I'm talking about the late Dr. Malafia, that there was also a governor behind, the funding of terrorism. And it was actually specific that the current governor, in one of the northern part of the country, we don't know which one. So, but since he's gone, I'm not sure whether he left a note that the family will probably release later in his memoir, that we probably read which of the governor. But what we can say is the Central Bank of Nigeria that has unveiled the anti-money laundering, combating the finance of terrorism. But the question then is, what kind of evidence, to link such an individual personality, we're talking about the CBN governor. Is a very, very high profile position, but like I said, as of today, President Muhammadu Buhari is still giving him her backing, and that will literally mean that nothing is going to happen to Emefiele, even though as things is getting hotter, election is getting closer. Will all that mean that maybe after whatever is going to happen in 2023, if an election will hold or not, will Emefiele still remain as the central bank governor, is something that I'm not sure is going to happen. Regarding whether APC comes back or PDP wins or the Labour Party, or the country goes into a total disintegration.
Well, when the country goes to a total disintegration, Adax Breaker says Nigeria has become a very serious joke. Ms. Gold said that when it comes to Dr. Obadia, they took his life. That's what he's saying pertaining to that. But listeners, it is Starr Radio UK, the Wednesday edition of the morning show, updates of, from Nigeria with Mr. Olayomi Koiki. Let me ask him one other question, and then we will allow him to bring you all the others. But this evening, exactly at 18 hours, the maiden edition of the Niger Voices for the year 2023 is going to be taking place, and we want to invite you on that platform so that you have all the time to look at what is happening. Okay, now when it comes to INEC, the INEC chairman saying that, well, logistics have been a major problem. Last week and the week before, I think he's been going around saying that everything is fine, election is going to be taking place. He says, oh, they've trained their personnel, said that they'll be able to, stop people who want to maybe rake or do whatever, a lot of things that he said. Now he's coming back to say that there's a major problem in conducting election that is pertaining to logistics. So what is he talking about there then?
Well, 2019, we were on the ground, Star Radio UK to monitor, the election that took place in Nigeria. And, it's just that, unfortunately, logistics has always been the problem. Logistics in the sense that whether Nigerians are serious that an election, that should have been resolved, logistics means that part of the materials that will be needed on the ground. And I'm just trying to bring you, while the INEC chairman, just a little bit snip of some of what he says right here in Chatham House yesterday.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alex Myers, and I want to thank Chatham House for the invitation to speak today on this illustrious platform, which has over the years welcomed exceptional intellectuals, celebrated public servants, and renowned statesmen. I have been informed that I am only the second chairman of Nigeria's Electoral Commission to speak at Chatham House after Professor Atairu Jega in 2015. I appreciate this profoundly. I am all the more excited because I've been invited to speak on Nigeria's 2023 general elections with particular emphasis on preparations and priorities for electoral integrity and inclusion. It is exactly 38 days to the next general election in Nigeria, which I have both the privilege and challenge of leading its proper delivery.
Well, some of those challenges is what you just said here. Logistics has often been a major ills of elections in Nigeria, and we are determined to solve the challenge. We have established a logistic management system. Muhammadu Yakubu, the chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission, says the electoral body major problem in conducting election is logistics. We have a lot of remote places. We have places that the network is not going to be working, and I'm not sure how conducting an election where you can get the result in a time in a timely way is going to happen as well. But what we can say is, we had him there speaking here in London. And a lot of Nigerians have also been asking, why is the chairman, you did have him there say he will be the second person to be invited by Chatham House. Peter Obi was there on Monday. Kwankwaso will be there today. Atiku have spoken, I believe, but Tinubu spoke some few weeks ago. And it seems that election of Nigeria all also operate from here in London, where you have to be speaking in Chatham House to present your case to the international community. So the question is, for the first time, INEC is saying that they now have a comprehensive election logistic framework to guide the logistic for the general election. We have known that there's been a lot of atrocity, going on in Nigeria in terms of INEC buildings being burnt down by some of the politicians that keep sponsoring that. And that will take us, by the time I come back, to the next conversation where Nigeria election 2023, how influencers are secretly paid by political parties, just as they continue to burn down most INEC offices across the country, in the southwest, and likewise in the northeast, in the northwest, and in the southeast of Nigeria. Will election hold, as the Biafra says no, the Yoruba says no, the Middle Belt says no, and the Ninas are saying a 1999 constitution should be brought down, and if a constitution is brought down, that means Nigeria will no longer exist. Because what makes a country is the constitution. And Ninas and the rest are saying that the 1999 constitution is no longer valid to conduct a new election, which is, according to INEC chairman, 38 more days. There will be a lot for the international community to discuss and talk about. But for Star Radio UK, later on tonight, we will have a lot to discuss. Because of the time constraint, I'm going to come back again to you in the studio. But later on Nigeria Voices, the first edition, will election hold? How is all this going to take place in 38 days from today, as the country is facing one of the most difficult times, more than the 1914 amalgamation that was put together by Sir Lord Frederick Lugard?
Well, we will wake up on the 24th or the 23rd of February for an announcement to come through to say that, that election is not going to be holding on the 25th or postponed till further notice or something. What is going to happen until then? We're all going to be keeping our fingers and everything crossed. But Kemi Adewale says that pertaining to Dr. Malafia's case, he said he knew too much. That's why he was killed. He knew too much. That's why they killed him there. But well, don't you go away. It is Starr Radio UK. I'm going to hand over to Mr. Olayomi Kweke to bring you in depth of all the other stories making the rounds. Over to you, Yomi.
Well, the most important part this morning is, as a lot of campaign goes on in Nigeria, for the election, we just had the INEC chairman will be speaking. We'll be taking more of that later on tonight. During the Niger Voices. Make sure you join us at exactly 6 p.m. local time in London. That will be 7 p.m. local time back in Nigeria, where we're going to review. We're also going to review a lot that has happened, while I was away, for the last couple of days, while Archie was holding on to. We're going to be hearing from, Professor Banja Akintoye, the post-mortem of what took place at the rally. But for me now, let's take you through one or two of the headlines happening. Nigeria election 2023, how influencers are secretly paid by political parties. According to the BBC investigation, has now discovered that political parties in Nigeria are secretly paying social media influencers to spread disinformation about their opponents ahead of the general elections in February. The BBC Global Disinformation Team has spoken to whistleblowers working for two of the Nigerian political parties and prominent influencers who have described it as an industry. Let me give you an example of one of those, individual that we believe might also be working for or against. His name is, Reno Mokere. Reno Mokere lives here in Manchester and is also a staunch supporter of Atiku, but his attack on Peter Obi and Tinubu tells that definitely is one of those influencers, and that also goes, to some of the other political parties. But how much are they paid is the question that a lot of our listeners on Starr Radio UK would like to know. I can tell you, Mr. Archie, if you're an influencer, you could be taking home around £37,000, which is about 20 million naira for delivering a result. We are also giving people gifts. Other people prefer to hear, what do you want to do in the government? Be a board member, be a special assistant, and these are reasons why a lot of Nigerians are now asking that, can we continue in this position, like those that are campaigning for the Biafra nation, for the Yoruba nation, the Middle Belt, and those that probably are not too sure, of what is actually going on in Nigeria. But today, as an influencer, you could be taking home £37,000. Remember, it is not also taxed, because nobody knows that you've received such money as well. So let's quickly go back to one or two headlines, but later on we will have more time to discuss headlines. Let me talk about the governor of the governor of Ondo State. The wife actually, I don't know how the audio got out, but there was an audio that was released, from the wife that says that there's somebody working with the governor, probably a mistress, that has now looted the country or the state coffer. But not just only that, is actually giving the husband some kind of concussion because the husband is not very well. Remember that Akeredolu have spent more time in Germany receiving treatment, while in his state, not people can get access to good medical care. These are part of the reason why the Yorubas are saying that, for 1999 till date, there has been no development. But again, Akeredolu also meet APC candidate amid health scare. I met him once, while I was in Nigeria, I believe in 2017 on a trip down to Ondo State. And from the person I saw then compared to now, you could tell that definitely something is wrong somewhere. Ondo State Governor Rotimi Akeredolu has appeared in the public after a health scare, as he held a meeting with the candidate of the All Progressive Congress ahead of the forthcoming general election. In a statement, according to his chief press secretary to the governor, Mr. Richard Olatunde, the governor met with the candidate at the government house, Agbaka in Akure, in the state capital, yesterday. Before the meeting, the CPS to the governor at LA in a statement said there was no cause for alarm on the health status of his principal. We were told the same thing until we found out that Yaradua was dead in Germany, and they were trying to prevent the vice president, then Jonathan, from taking over. And you can tell that these are the kind of politicking that is going on in Nigeria as of today. So let me take two more and come back again to you in the studio. Once again, it is Starr Radio UK. Subsidy, the federal government borrowing to import fuels. Wow. Well, it seems that nothing goes away in Nigeria, as we know all the time. But what do we know? The federal government has said it's sometimes, we don't know how many, out of the 8 years of the tenure of the President Muhammadu Buhari, and as a lot of people will always remember him in this image. I don't know why his media team released such an image, but the other image of the Nigerians was just added to that. But probably maybe President have just finished eating nama or suya, and they decided, oh, it would be nice to have the president with a kind of an image like this, and it was actually released some few years ago. But the federal government says it sometimes borrows funds to buy petrol as the country continued to incur rising fuel subsidy bills. The government also confirmed that there was possibility of global economic recession this year, but stressed that Nigerian foreign exchange reserves were healthy enough to withstand the shock. So, according to the Minister of Finance and Budget, the National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, disclosed this yesterday. We're going to elaborate more on this later on Nigeria Voices. Should Nigeria be concerned that whatever is going to happen between now and the next 38 days and after, should Nigerians now be preparing for the worst global recession in the country? Star Radio UK will be giving you all those details. But for now, 29 minutes past 11, I will come back again to you in the studio as we are dealing with the winter, with the strikes. Yesterday, I was traveling, within, the country yesterday, and you could tell that so many British, so many people living here are complaining bitterly. My wife is already complaining. My mom complained about the gas bill, which has gone up so much. And as we advise our elderly ones, keep the house warm, we can deal with the gas bill according to what we can do. Star Radio UK, it is your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. And once again, Happy New Year for those of you that are catching up with us for the very first program. But later on tonight, it's going to be a hot one. But for now, I return back to the studio, Mr. Archie.
Yes, listeners, updates from Nigeria with Mr. Olayomi in our North London studios. I'm Archie here in the South studios. Let me read a couple of comments here and then we come back to Yomi. Our boss baby says, good morning, Star Radio workers and Mr. Koiki Media. Please, so Nigeria is expired and we don't want to be we don't want it to continue. We don't want Nigeria to continue again. We want our land alone with our owners to control it. Okay, now Shegun Phillips says the fuel issue don't tire me, wallahi. Well, he said he's tired about the whole thing. But well, a country that is supposed to be, this is the fifth or the sixth crude oil producer in the world, still begging or going to loan money to subsidize fuel. And I ask myself, what are our leaders doing? They are the same people who will try to come and tell you that vote for them and then we vote for them, and then they will go around stealing the fuel and everything, giving to us as bribes for us to vote for them. Interesting. But you want more about that? This evening, exactly at 18 hours GMT, we'll have Mr. Olayomi bringing you Niger Voices, the maiden edition for the year 2023. Bayomi, let's come to Oluwatoyin. Hello, long time no hear, no see, and we are doing very, very well. God bless you. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, when it came to that election, because somebody posted some comments asking about the rally. Is it the mega rally? I've forgotten the term that we were using. Yes, the super. Yeah, the one that took place in Lagos, and the death of that gentleman there. I think one person lost their life, but what exactly took place? Two people. Okay, what took place then?
Well, what took place is that the Nigerian government, as we know, especially either the state or the whether it's the state or the federal, are always very very scared of having a rally in Lagos State. And that literally means that, when the rally started on the 9th in Lagos State, as quickly as possible, police were deployed. And they were not just deployed, they came with a live ammunition, and eventually 2 people were killed. It was not that the protesters or those that were out on that rally were doing anything, from the fact that they were actually, the road were not blocked. But let's hear a brief of what, Professor Banji Akintoye said, after math of the postmortem of that particular rally in just about a few minutes. Once again, it is Star Radio UK. It is your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. But on that fateful day, what we saw was, the attack, by the state in the Lagos state, which quickly wanted to make sure that the gathering, which was still building up, it was not going to happen. Not just tear gas was used, but they were also using a live round ammunition, and that literally led, to the death of 2 individuals, as we know. Also, we do also remember that it's not the first time we've seen such, even though there was no rally on the 25th of December last year, a young woman, a lawyer with twins in her body, was killed by the Lagos State Police, in Ajah, when she was on her way back home. So for those that probably were also saying that such a rally shouldn't have been held, let's remember that in 2021, the same Lagos State killed Jumoke Oyeleke with a straight bullet that eventually led to the death of Jumoke Oyeleke. We're just preparing the ground to hear from a little bit of what Professor Banji Akintoye said, but I'll come back again to you in the studio when that is ready. I'm just going to let you know, and we bring that in just for a snip.
Yeah, but does that mean that the rally took place at all, or after that people dispersed? Because I knew that the following day there was supposed to be another rally. Did it take place at all? People
dispersed immediately after such, because of the chaotic that was happening. Yeah. But the following day the rally went ahead. But after such, there's still going to be more rallies. But the question is, should the rally in Lagos continue, or should we put that on hold, since it seems that Lagos is giving a little bit of concern? But these are part of what Professor Banji Akintoye said just after the rally. Let's hear a little bit from him.
That we have embarked upon, which is to seize our country out of Nigeria. It cannot be an easy revolution. Nobody expects it. They are just kidding. They are trivializing a very important matter. They are trivializing it. And they have become an obstacle, seriously speaking. But obstacle or not obstacle, the important thing is the heart of the people who are in the struggle. As long as you are determined to go on, go on. There will be times of failure, there will be times of success. But as Winston Churchill said, if you are engaged in a major struggle for your people, to protect your people, prevent them from being destroyed, and to lift them up in the world, if you are engaged in that kind of struggle, always remember that you will encounter failure, you will also encounter success along the way. Do not over-assess either success or failure. Because the success, when it comes, is not final. And the failure, when it comes, is not fatal. That's it. Don't stand rejoicing if success comes your way. Go on walking towards your goal. If failure comes, don't stand there moping about it. Go on. And if you find at any time that you are going through fire, just keep going.
Well, that is the part of the conversation, and this was about just 2 days, when Professor Banji Akintoye was being interviewed, to go into the post-mortem for the Lagos rally, and you have him there. Whether it's a failure, is a success, the fight for revolution, the fight for a freedom must continue. Starr Radio UK.
Well, listeners, if this doesn't appetize you to join the Niger Voices this evening, then I don't know exactly what more you want for you to be enticed, or to bring that appetite for you to join the program. So you're going to do that. It's 11:37, but before we sign off from the updates, Shegun Phillips says, imagine I use a generator to work and still pay NEPA with the money I got using the generator. And it goes on further to say, unarmed protesters, for God's sake. He's talking about the protesters that were being fired on by the security agencies. And Miss Gold says, Lagos State still kill Bamishe inside the BRT. So virtually, he's talking about the insecurity, whether even without a rally, what the Lagos State is perpetrating. But what do you think? We want to know more, and we would love to see you on the Niger Voices this evening, exactly at 18 hours. But Yomi, before we end the updates,
Well, just stay tuned, for more update, at 12 p.m. later on. We're going to go to the PMQ where there's so much to discuss, as well as the Prime Minister will be speaking to us later on as well. But for now, make sure you tune in just about 6 hours from now for those in UK and 7 hours from now for those back in Nigeria, where I'll be coming with 38 more days into election. What should we be expecting from everything happening in Nigeria? And it's going to be a very hot one. We're going to open the phone line during the program, so you'll also be able to engage with us. But for now, stay tuned on Star Radio UK. And I say very good morning to those of you in Miami, and those of you in Nigeria, and those of you in Europe, Asia. Continue to tune into your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. Bye for now, Mr. Archie.
Bye. Thank you very much, Mr. Olayomi Koike. Listen to Star Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Let me bring you this song, and then I will continue with the show. And this is from Janet, and he says Yoruba Nation, in support of everyone who feels oppressed by anyone. Yes, enjoy it, and I'll be with you. Stay tuned. Top dog.
Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Ọmọ Yorùbá kí la fẹ́ o. Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Ọmọ wọn Nàìjíríà. Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Ọmọ wọn Nàìjíríà. Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Ṣé kí ìtọ́ mi sẹ́yìn o? Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Ìtẹ̀pá wa jẹ́ òtítọ́. Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Ìyà yìí máa pọ̀ lápọ̀jù. Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Ẹ̀yà wa jẹ́ tún pa wá. Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Ebi ń pa wá, ìyà ń jẹ wá. Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Sàbúrò ló ti pa wá tán.
This is Star Radio UK.
Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Àwa ò ṣe wọ́n Nàìjíríà mọ́. Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Nísìnyí o, Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Ẹ pariwo, ẹ gbóhùn sókè. Yoruba nation la fẹ́. Ẹ jẹ́ kó dàmọ̀, ẹ jẹ́ kó rí gbọ́. Yoruba nation la fẹ́.
Oh, I would have loved you to enjoy the full length of that song, but don't you worry, tomorrow I promise you one thing for sure. If we are alive and we are here, I'm going to bring you the full tune. But I say good morning to Aziz Badasarika. He says, good morning, brother Koike and Mr. Archie. Hey, Aziz, happy New Year to you. I've not wished you. I hope you are doing very, very, very well. And we thank God Nigeria has not happened to you. Okay, let's take a quick commercial break, and once we come back, I'll bring you the rest of the stories making the rounds across the globe. But remember, this evening, exactly at 18 hours, join Mr. Olayomi Koike when he brings you the Naija Voices, where you have ample time to discuss and add your voice to the discussions on what is happening in Nigeria. 2023 elections, 38 days, or let me call it 37 days more. Would it hold or not?
Make that move now this festive season to your new home address at GHS Housing Estates. From now to 31st January 2023, we are offering you an amazing 5% buyer's discount on all purchases on our expandable 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom detached homes at Cochrane Villa, Pokwase, just 5 minutes drive from the interchange. The Mayflower and the new Hazel Courts at Kuntusi, 20 minutes drive from Achimatamo. Beautiful homes in a serene and gated community with flexible payment plans available. Call us now on 0544 347 980 or 0544 347 981. GHS Housing Estates. View it, love it, own it.
Welcome back to the program Star Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Well, Shegun Phillips said, please say the exact Nigeria time in the evening. That will be that will be, because here GMT is 18 hours, so it will be 19 hours Nigeria time. That is GMT plus 1, so that will be 7 o'clock Nigeria time. 7 o'clock Nigeria time, Niger Voices will be taking place. Shegun, I think I've clarified that for you. 7 o'clock Nigeria time, or 19 hours Nigeria time. Okay then, so now let's move on to some other stories making the rounds across the globe. Interestingly, A straight one from the African front. Let me just start on the headlines. Now, it says Malawi cholera prevention guidelines for schools and Senegalese soldiers killed in a clash with Casamance rebels army. Well, that rebels, that's what the army is saying. But I wouldn't have enough time to bring you all those details. But let me bring you a snippet of it. A Senegalese soldier was killed and 4 were wounded during an operation against separatist rebels in the southern region of Casamance. An army official has said yesterday. The soldier died Monday, January 16, in the locality of Bignona, where the army has been conducting operation this past few weeks to block attempts by the movement of Democratic Forces of Casamance to set up a new base near the border with the Gambia. Reports have suggested Casamance, Senegal's southmost region is almost separated from the rest of the country by the tiny state of the Gambia. Okay, so at the time of the incident, the Senegalese forces destroyed hemp fields, according to a local media there. So those are some of the stories making the rounds, and as you know, because we are pressed with time, I just need to move on. In Burkina Faso, Traoré worried about the fate of civilians targeted by jihadists. That's the leader there. The president of the transition in Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, estimated on Tuesday that a new phase had been triggered by the terrorists against civilians a few days after the kidnappings of around 50 women in the north of the country. Well, this is all coming your way from Starr Radio UK. How are they going to be dealing with that? How are they going to be dealing with that? Are they going to jaw or what is going to happen? Now, escaped tiger in South Africa found and euthanized. A tiger that escaped from a private farm in South Africa and attacked the man and killed 2 dogs and a pig while on the loose for days was euthanized. Okay, information coming through just few moments ago. Okay, now let's move on straight. Now, newborns under domestic debt exchange program potentially worthless. That's what Senor Hosi is saying. He says that, well, the convener of the Ghana Individual Bondholders Forum, Senor Hosi, has rebuffed claims that the rejection of the domestic debt exchange program by individual bondholders will bring untold economic hardship to the country and will potentially make their bonds worthless. According to him, data available from the Finance Ministry demonstrate that such claims are false and merely meant to create a state of fear and panic to get bondholders to sign onto the ongoing debt exchange program. Now speaking, he explained that signing onto the debt exchange program will rather make one bond potentially worthless and irredeemable. So if you're a bondholder, what are you going to be doing pertaining to that if you are in Ghana? It is Starr Radio UK. It is your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. All right, let's move on straight. Straight on to some of the stories making the rounds in other parts of the world before I take you to the House of Parliament for the Prime Minister's question time. A very sad story that happened this morning, and this pertains to the Interior Minister for Ukraine. The 3 main figures in Ukraine's Interior Ministry have been killed in a helicopter crash besides a nursery in an eastern suburb of the capital, Kyiv. Interior Minister Denis Monastrisky, 42, died alongside his first deputy minister and state secretary. Now, 16 people died when the helicopter came down in Brovary, including 3 children, according to updated details from the Ukraine presidency. Now, Mr. Monastrisky is the highest profile Ukrainian casualty since the war began. The deputy head of Ukraine's presidential office, Kirilo Timoshenko, said the minister had been en route to a war hotspot when his helicopter went down. His death cuts the heart of the government in Kyiv, as the Interior Ministry has the vital task of maintaining security and running the police during the war. Now, President Volodymyr Zelensky has spoken of a terrible tragedy that claimed the lives of true patriots. That's some of the story making the rounds. However, there is no indication the crash was anything other than an accident, although witnesses said Russia's war was to blame for the disaster. It was very foggy and there was no electricity, and when there is no electricity, there are no lights on the buildings, local resident Vladimir Yemelenko said. So key officials are flown by helicopter across Ukraine at 3 levels, but that comes with risk. All that was recognizable of the helicopter was a door panel and one of its rotors, which landed on the roof of a car. Next to it were 3 bodies covered in foil blankets. The main kindergarten building was left badly damaged by the crash, and that is a very, very sad occurrence there. Very sad one because there are no lights, so it was difficult for the pilots to see exactly where they were, though they have a height that is supposed to be flying. Definitely you have to land or something of the sort, and it ended up striking a building. Well, we say may their souls rest in perfect peace. But information that was coming through was that Russia, that's Vladimir Putin, was to make a statement today, and we'll be following it very closely to monitor what exactly he's going to be saying. Is it that he's now tired with the war, and therefore the war is over, and therefore everybody should go home? And what do you think? Well, now in the US as well, Elon Musk trial prospective jurors call him narcissistic smart. Now, prospective jurors in a civil lawsuit against Elon Musk have a range of opinions of him, from smart, successful to off his rocker. Now, Mr. Musk, who is being sued by Tesla shareholders, arguing he manipulated the firm's share price, has said he cannot get a fair trial in San Francisco. He wanted the trial to take place in Texas, where he has moved Tesla headquarters, but that was rejected. A jury has been selected after jurors completed a pre-trial questionnaire. The case centers on a 2018 tweet saying that he will take Tesla private. U.S. regulator removed Mr. Musk as Tesla chairman because of the post. On the 7th of August 2018, he tweeted that he had funding secured to take the car maker private in what would be a £72 billion buyout. That is 58.7 billion. Now, in a second tweet, Musk added that investor support is confirmed and that the deal was only awaiting a vote by shareholders. No such deal went ahead. The claim is that the investors felt that they were defrauded by Musk's tweet that he was considering taking Tesla private, and critically that he had funding secured for it. Now, Robert Bartlett, a law professor at the University of California, Berkeley, said that they turned out not to be the case. So when the stock price rose after the news, they allegedly bought, and then it collapsed. When the truth came out, they claimed that that was fraud. The Tesla CEO, however, argued that he believed that he had secured funding from Saudi Arabia investment fund and did not commit security fraud. So what do you think is going to happen there? Are they going to find out that, well, he didn't actually get the financiers and then therefore secure finance, and therefore he is what is going to happen to him? Well, I don't have enough time today to go through all that, but I promise you one thing for sure, that tomorrow, God willing, we'll be bringing you more on that front. Now, when it comes to the UK, let's look at some of the checks making the round, the stories making the rounds today. Well, the Chancellor was yesterday and this morning saying on some channels trying to educate the public. Now, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has been compared to Mr. Bean over a social media video in which he uses coffee cups to explain inflation. In the video, Mr. Hunt orders a flat white before explaining what he is going to tackle rising, or how what he is doing to tackle rising prices. He says a cup of coffee a year ago was around £2.50, but it's now £3. He then sets out the reason for high inflation, such as the war in Ukraine. Both Labour and the Liberal Democrats criticized the Chancellor's video. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has pledged to halve inflation this year, but many expect this to happen anyway, largely due to slowdown in energy prices. The government's official forecaster of the Office for Budget Responsibility, the OBR, expects inflation, which measures the rate of price rises, to fall to 4% by the end of the year. The video was released after the latest inflation figures were released early today. Although price rises slowed for a second month in a row, the cost of food, including milk, cheese, eggs, kept inflation at a 40-year high of 10.5% in the year to December. Sarah Onley, the Lib Dems Treasury spokesperson, said the last thing families need was Mr. Bean SQ video from the Conservative Party. Well, he's trying to educate people. What about that? Well, it is all coming away from Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Well, use words carefully, warns generic after migrant row. That's what he said. Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has said politicians must choose their words carefully after Holocaust survivor criticized the Home Secretary's language on immigration. On Friday, John Salter, 83, told Suella Braverman her words reminded her of language used to justify the murder of my family and millions of others. Mr. Jenrick said on ITV it was right to listen to Miss Salter's experience. However, he also said Miss Braverman had made an important point. There is a significant difference between those people who come to the UK through genuine persecution and human rights abuses around the world, which they are many, and those who come gaming the system for economic reasons. He said we have to be able to make the distinction in a sensible way, or else we will find tens, nearly hundreds of thousands of people crossing our borders every year. Footage of the exchange between Miss Salter and Miss Braverman at a constituency event in Farnham emerged over the weekend. This one coming away from Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Well, patients have been told to expect disruption as nurses strike. It's one of the stories making the run. Patients are being warned to expect widespread disruption to services on Wednesday and Thursday as nurses stage more strikes in England. Now, about 1 out of every 4 hospitals and community services will be affected by the walkout by Royal College of Nursing members over the 2 days. It comes after 2 days of strike before Christmas in the pay dispute. As required under trade union laws, emergency care will be covered during the walkout from 08 hours to 20 hours. It will mean service such as chemotherapy, kidney dialysis, and intensive care will be provided. But it's all coming away from Starr Radio UK. It is your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. One final one, and then we bring the first part of the program to a close, and I can take you to the House of Parliament for the Prime Minister's question time. Now, gender row, legal challenge likely to fail. That's what a judge is saying. Now, the Scottish government chance of winning a legal challenge over the gender reform row are very low, a former Supreme Court judge has said. Now, Lord Hope said a UK government document outlining its reasons for blocking the Scottish reforms was devastating. And he said Scotland's First Minister was risking wasting a lot of time and money by taking the issue to court. He instead called for both sides to attempt to find compromise in much calmer atmosphere, and he claimed it was quite wrong to characterize the UK government blocking of the bill as an attack on devolution. That's quite an interesting one. Around the world, this will be going down as a template, because people will think that, well, if a particular group thinks that, well, they are being marginalized, they should shush their mouths, or they come up with a policy, or their own call it government, a devolved government comes out with a policy that this is what we want to do, and the federal government says that no, we will not allow you to do that. what would they do? He said, well, cool heads have to prevail. Let them sit and jaw. What about that? The reforms which are intended to make it easier for trans people to change their legally recognized sex were passed by the Scottish Parliament last month. The UK government is blocking the legislation under what is known as Section 35 order, arguing that the Scottish legislation would have a detrimental impact on equalities law that currently apply across Scotland, England, and Wales. So how devolved are devolved government? That's a question there. But whatever it is, I'll be back with you tomorrow morning with another edition of the morning show. But for now, we're going to call it a day. I'm going to take you to the House of Parliament for the Prime Minister's question time. So stay tuned and don't you go away. But remember, this evening exactly at 18 hours, that is 6 o'clock UK time and 7 o'clock Nigeria time, 7 p.m. Nigeria time, Niger Voices, the maiden edition for the year 2023 will be taking place. On that note, let me say it once again. Say it loud. Have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy the song whilst I try to bring you the PM Kill.
Love. 1, 2, 3.
Agreed in April, they don't kick in until August. Do you make sure they get a concrete pay rise from April? These are all of the things that are being discussed, but at the moment there's no solution, and the difficulty for the government is that these strikes are running into not just January but February and even beyond. And I guess there is a hope in government that the public lose patience with public sector workers, but all the polling suggests that the public are definitely on the side of NHS workers, and the people they're blaming are the government for not actually resolving it. From a public perspective, you pay taxes to get public services delivered to you, and the person that takes your taxes and then is expected to deliver those services is the government. So at the moment, the fault is being laid at the feet of the government. But you will see Rishi Sunak, I imagine, come back to Labour, attacking Labour for not backing new strike legislation, and he will make the argument he made last week, which is we're trying to put minimum service levels in, and you aren't backing the public on this.
It's interesting. I'll go back to what Mick Whelan said this morning. He was talking to Kay. He said, I've never been in a process where people are being so underhand and deceitful, and I've been negotiating at all levels in this industry for about 38 years. Do you think this really is the worst place that we've ever been in when it comes to industrial action?
I think certainly we haven't seen this level of strike action since the 1980s, so this is a kind of once in decades moment. But of course, we haven't seen inflation at the levels that we have for many decades either, and it is really putting a strain on public sector workers. I think public sector workers and the unions would say that the government trying to put through legislation in order to contain strike action at this time does not help industrial relations. And of course, the unions have made it very clear that if the government does pass this legislation, that they will challenge it in the courts. So, you know, the argument would be that doesn't help the situation. But from the government's perspective, their counter-argument would be it's not unreasonable to ask key public sector workers to have minimum service levels. And, you know, this has been going on since December and it's still rumbling on. And the people that are really suffering here are the public.
Good afternoon if you're just joining us. It's 1 minute past midday. Let's go straight to the comments for this week's PMQs.
From across the House will be as shocked and appalled as I am about the case of David Carrick. The abuse of power is truly sickening, and our thoughts are with his victims. The police must address the failings in this case, restore public confidence and ensure the safety of women and girls. There will be no place to hide for those who use their position to intimidate those women and girls or those who have failed to act to reprimand and remove those people unfit from office. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others in addition to my duties in this House. I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
As the project champion for the North Midlands Manufacturing Corridor, next week I'm bringing together businesses, leaders and local councillors from across the region in Parliament to set out to Department for Transport officials the importance of the A50, A500 corridor. The Prime Minister understands the importance of investing in our infrastructure and unlocking the potential of our towns and cities. So will he urge government colleagues from Bays and DLUC to attend the meeting and to hear more about the benefits this investment would bring to our region?
Mr. Speaker, the government recognises the strategic importance of the A50, A500 corridor to the Midlands. I know final decisions on this scheme will be made in the third road investment strategy, which is fully published next year, but I know my honourable friend will be contacting ministers in the relevant departments to invite them to hear her case.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join with the Prime Minister in his comments about the dreadful case of Carrick? Mr. Speaker, it's 3 minutes past 12. If somebody phones 999 now because they have chest pains and fear it might be a heart attack, when would the Prime Minister expect an ambulance to arrive?
Mr. Speaker, it's absolutely right that people can rely on the emergency services when they need them, and that's why we're rapidly implementing measures to improve the delivery of ambulance times and indeed urgent and emergency care. But I'd say to the honourable gentleman, if he cares about ensuring that patients get access to life-saving emergency care when they need it, why won't he support our minimum safety legislation?
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister can deflect all he likes, but for the person suffering from chest pains, the clock started ticking straight away. Every minute counts. That's why the government says an ambulance should be there in 18 minutes. In that case, it would mean just about 20 past 12. Now, I know he doesn't want to answer the question I asked him, so I'm going to ask him again. When will that ambulance arrive?
Mr. Speaker, because of the extra funding we're putting in to relieve pressure in urgent and emergency care departments, because of the investment we're putting in ambulance call handling, we will improve ambulance times as we are recovering from the pandemic and indeed the pressures of this winter. But I say to the honourable gentleman again, because he makes my case for me, he describes the life-saving care that people desperately need. So why, when in other countries like France, Spain, Italy and others, why is he depriving people here that care?
Mr. Speaker, he obviously doesn't know or doesn't care. I'll tell him. If our heart attack victim had called for an ambulance in Peterborough at 12:03, it wouldn't arrive until 10 past 2. These are our constituents waiting for ambulances I'm talking about. If it was Northampton, it wouldn't arrive until 20 past.
Order. Mr. Blister, I hope you want to see the rest of the questions out, because I want you to be here, but you're going to have to behave better. Come on, Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, I'm talking about our constituents. If they were in Northampton, it wouldn't arrive until 20 past 2. If they were in Plymouth, it wouldn't arrive until 20 to 3. That's why someone who fears a heart attack waiting more than 2.5 hours for an ambulance. Not the worst case scenario, just the average wait. So for 1 week, will he stop blaming others, take some responsibility, and just admit, under his watch, the NHS is in crisis, isn't it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I noticed the one place the honourable gentleman didn't mention was Wales, where we know ambulance times are even worse than they are in England, Mr. Speaker. No, and the reason that is the case, because this is not about politics. This is about the fact that the NHS in Scotland, in Wales, in England is dealing with unprecedented challenges, recovering from COVID, dealing with a very virulent and early flu season, and everyone is doing their best to bring those wait times down. But again, I'll ask him, if he believes so much in improving ambulance wait times, why won't he support our minimum safety legislation?
Mr. Speaker, he won't answer any questions and he won't take any responsibility. By 1 o'clock, our heart attack victim is in a bad way. Sweaty, dizzy, chest tightening. This is a heart attack and they're shouting, this is your constituent. By that time, they should be getting treatment. But an hour after they've called 999, they're still lying there, waiting, listening to the clock tick. How does he think they feel knowing an ambulance could be still hours away?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the specific and practical things we are doing to improve ambulance times are clear. We are investing more in urgent and emergency care to create more bed capacity. We're ensuring that the flow of patients through emergency care is faster than it ever has been. We're discharging people at a record rate out of hospitals to ease the constraints that they are facing. And we are reducing the call-out rates by moving people out of ambulance stacks and being dealt with in a community. Now, these are all very practical steps that will make a difference in the short term. But I ask him again and again, and we know why. The reason that he is not putting patients first when it comes to ambulance waiting times is because he is simply in the pockets of his union paymaster.
Mr. Speaker, this isn't hypothetical. This is real life. Stephanie from Plymouth was battling cancer when she collapsed at home. Her mum rang 999, desperate for help. She only lived a couple of miles from the hospital, but they couldn't prioritise her. She was 26 when she died, waiting for that ambulance. A young woman whose life was ended far too soon. And I said, Dad, I can't even fathom that pain. So, on behalf of Stephanie and her family, will you stop the excuses, stop shifting the blame, stop the political games, and simply tell us, when will he sort out these delays and get back to the 18-minute wait?
Mr. Speaker, of course, Stephanie's case is a tragedy. Of course, people are working as hard as they can to ensure people get the care they need. But he talks about political games. He is a living example of playing political games when it comes to people's healthcare. I've already mentioned what's been going on in Wales. Is he confident in the Labour-run Wales NHS that nobody is suffering right now? Of course they are, Mr. Speaker, because the NHS everywhere is under pressure. What we should be doing is supporting those doctors and nurses to make the changes that we are doing to bring the care to those people. But I'll ask him this: if he is so concerned about making sure that the Stephanies of the future get the cares they need, why is he denying those families the guarantee of emergency life-saving care?
So that's his answer to Stephanie's family. Deflect, blame others, never take responsibility. Just like last week, he won't say when he's going to deliver the basic minimum service levels people need. Mr. Speaker, over the 40 minutes or so that these sessions tend to last, 700 people will call an ambulance. 2 will be reporting a heart attack. 4 will be reporting a stroke. But instead of the rapid help they need, many will wait and wait and wait. So if he won't answer any questions, will he at least apologise for the lethal chaos under his watch?
Mr. Speaker, he asks about the minimum safety levels. We will deliver them as soon as we can pass them. Why won't he vote for them, first of all? But Mr. Speaker, we are delivering on the people's priorities. As we've seen this week, the honourable gentleman will just say anything if the politics suits him. It's as simple as that. He will break promises left, right and centre. He promised to nationalise public services. He promised to have a second referendum. He promised to defend the mass migration of the EU. And now we're apparently led to believe that
I expect the front bench just to keep a little quiet, because if they don't, there's somewhere else for them to shout their noise. 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, if we are going to deliver for the British people, people need to have strong convictions. But when it comes to the honourable gentleman, he isn't just for the free movement of people, he's also got the free movement of principles.
Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the independent Net Zero Review was published by my honourable friend, the member for Kingswood. Does my right honourable friend join me in welcoming many of those recommendations, and in particular to provide clarity and continuity to all those working to decarbonise our economy, especially those supporting South Shropshire Climate Action Group in my constituency?
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I thank my right honourable friend, the member for Kingswood, for his review, but also pay tribute to my right honourable friend for his work in this area. I'm pleased that the report recognised the UK's leadership in tackling climate change and catalysing a global transformation in how other countries are dealing with it. We have, as the report acknowledged, exceeded expectations to decarbonise, and we're responding to the full range of the review's requests and recommendations in the coming year.
Leader of the SNP, Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, to promise is a thing, to keep it is another. Well, the Scottish Government kept their manifesto promise to the people, and thanks to support from members of all political parties in Holyrood, the GRR bill was passed. Surely in that context, the Prime Minister must recognise that it is a dangerous moment for devolution when both he and indeed the Leader of the Opposition seek to overturn a promise made between Scotland's politicians and Scotland's people.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me be crystal clear that the decision in this case is centred on the legislation's consequences for reserved matters, as is laid out in the Scotland Act, which established the Scottish Parliament, which the honourable gentleman talks about, and at the time supported by the SNP. This bill would have a significant adverse effect on UK-wide equalities matters, and so the Scottish Secretary, with regret, has rightly acted.
Mr. Speaker, let me be crystal clear. This is the Conservative Party seeking to stoke a culture war against some of the most marginalised people in society, and Scotland's democracy is simply collateral damage. And on that issue of democracy, let's reflect, because on Monday the UK Government introduced legislation to ban the right to strike against the express wishes of the Scottish Government. On Tuesday they introduced legislation to overturn the GRR against the express wishes of the Scottish Government. And this evening they will seek to put in place legislation that rips up thousands of EU protections against the express wishes of the Scottish Government. Are we not now on a slippery slope from devolution to direct rule?
No, Mr. Speaker, of course we're not. This is simply about protecting UK-wide legislation, about ensuring the safety of women and children. This is not about the devolution settlement. I would urge the honourable gentleman and his party to consider engaging with the UK government on this bill, as we did before the legislation passed, so that we can find a constructive way forward in the interest of the people of Scotland and the United Kingdom.
Edward Jensen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The care, education and support that children receive in their earliest years has the biggest impact on their future life outcomes. And that's why the affordability, accessibility and quality of childcare is so important for families in Eddisbury and right across the country. Yet, despite significant investment by the UK government since 2010, for too many families the childcare system remains inflexible, complex and expensive. So can I ask my right honourable friend to restate to this House his commitment to address this essential and pressing issue so that every child can have the best start in life?
Well, I know this is a topic my honourable friend knows very well from his own background, and he's right that it is essential to access quality childcare, which is why we provide every 3- and 4-year-old eligible with at least 15 hours a week of free childcare, and we are considering new plans to improve the cost, choice and affordability of childcare, whether consulting on ratios or indeed supporting more people to become childminders.
Andy.
A Transport Secretary implying NHS workers are deliberately putting people in danger. A Health Secretary pitting dedicated nurses against vulnerable patients. Does the Prime Minister really expect the public to believe that the very people who have dedicated their lives to saving life and limb are so reckless? Or is it not the case that this government have pushed them to their absolute limit and they have no other option but to strike?
Mr. Speaker, we have enormous respect and gratitude for all our public sector workers, especially those in the NHS, which is why we have backed them with not just record funding, but also record investment in more doctors and nurses, 15,000 more doctors, 30,000 more nurses, and more life-saving equipment, which will help them do their jobs. And we continue to want to engage constructively in dialogue with them.
David Simmons.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ruislip, Northern and Pinner has a great many car-dependent, older and disabled constituents, many of whom are horrified to read that the Mayor of London may have manipulated the outcome of his own consultation, in order to impose an unwanted £12.50 daily charge every time they go to a medical appointment or attend hospital. So, does my right honourable friend agree with me that any further rollout of the ULEZ should be paused until these matters have been fully investigated?
Well, my honourable friend has rightly pointed out that transport in London is devolved to the Labour Mayor of London, and it is disappointing that the Mayor, backed by the Leader of the Opposition, is choosing not to listen to the public, expanding the zone against the overwhelming views of residents and businesses. I urge the Mayor to properly reconsider and respond to these serious concerns.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister showed his card this week by ramming through the sacking nurses bill. He has literally gone from clapping nurses to sacking them. His Transport Secretary has said that the bill is unworkable, and the Education Secretary has said that it is not needed. Why does he still want the bill?
Mr. Speaker, it was the Labour Party that showed their cards this week when it came to backing working people. What I'd say to the honourable gentleman, if he really cares about supporting patients, if he really cares about children getting the education they receive, if he really cares about working people being able to go about their lives free from disruption, he should join actually in legislation which is prevalent in many other countries, ensure minimum safety levels in our critical public services, and get off the picket lines himself.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Continuing a theme, evidence is now very clear that the London Mayor's sham consultation has suppressed 5,000 negative responses from members and supporters of Fair Fuel UK, of which I am the APPG chairman. Now, what angers me is this is a tax against my residents in South Thanet. It's a tax against Kent residents. It's a tax against all of the home counties. This is true taxation without representation. And when my right honourable friend assure me he will do all that he can to stop this, because it is a tax that is a fill-up against a failed mayor's budget and a failed mayor.
Well, my honourable friend makes an excellent and powerful point. The Labour Mayor is imposing this tax on a public which does not want it. He's right to highlight that. Expanding this zone is not something that communities want, and I look forward to working with him to urge the Mayor to properly consider and respond to all these views and stop this unfair tax.
When, David?
Mr. Speaker, during a period of 12 months, 2 of my Caerphilly constituents have lost their lives after being attacked by dangerous dogs. A 10-year-old boy and a senior citizen. Fatalities have also occurred in other parts of the country. It is clear that the Dangerous Dogs Act is woefully inadequate. The government has commissioned studies. It has debated the subject at length, but it has done nothing. My question is, when will the government take action on the issue of dangerous dogs?
Well, the honourable gentleman raises a very important case, and I'm very sorry to hear about the specific families that he mentions, and we recognise that dog attacks can have horrific consequences, and I want to assure him that we take the issue incredibly seriously, and that's why we've established a working group between police, local authorities and other key stakeholders to consider all aspects of tackling irresponsible dog ownership. That working group will make its recommendations later this year, and of course the government will respond promptly.
Karen Bradley.
Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Staffordshire Moorlands District Council, run by the Conservatives, has an excellent track record of delivering for my constituents. Put a bid into the Levelling Up Fund, and I know that that money would make such an incredible difference to my constituents. So will he use his good office to encourage the Department for Levelling Up to look favourably on us this week?
Well, my right honourable friend has been a stalwart champion for her community, and in particular their Levelling Up Fund bid, which I know will make a massive difference to her community. I wish her and her constituents every success when we announce the next successful round of bidders to that fund.
Sarah Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of my constituents in Cheshire and Amersham are struggling to keep up with their energy bills this winter. When they do fall behind, too often families are punished by being switched over to prepayment meters, which are more expensive, which does nothing to help their financial situation. Will the Prime Minister back our call to ban energy companies from forcibly installing prepayment meters and stop energy companies from switching smart meters over to prepayment meters remotely?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the Honourable Lady that Ofgem actually has specific regulations in place regarding the use of prepayment meters and how energy companies should treat those that are struggling with their bills. But what I am pleased to say is that her constituents will receive around £900 at a minimum of support with their energy bills this winter as a result of the actions of this government.
Jacques Leplasty.
Will my right honourable friend join me in paying tribute and thanks to the several thousand people at MOD Defence Equipment and Support at Abbey Wood in my constituency who work tirelessly to ensure that the military equipment and supplies that we have pledged to the people of Ukraine are dispatched quickly and efficiently? And does he agree with me that events in Ukraine are a reminder yet again of the need to invest more in our own sovereign defence manufacturing capability?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend makes an excellent point, and I'm happy to join him in paying tribute to his constituents at the MOD facility. The work they are doing is making a critical difference in the fight to combat Russian aggression in Ukraine. I know it's extremely appreciated both by the President of Ukraine and his people, and he's right also that it highlights the need for more investment, which is why we're putting £24 billion of investment into our armed forces, but also increasing the amount of kit that we manufacture here at home.
Elaborate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's almost a year to the day since the then Business Secretary, at a visit to the British Rail site in my constituency, promised the company £100 million and proudly boasted to the national media that he couldn't think of a better project that better demonstrated levelling up. Yesterday, the company entered administration, having received not a penny in financial support from the government. Would the Prime Minister agree with me that there's not a single project in the country that better demonstrates the government's lack of industrial strategy, failure of levelling up and abandonment of the North East?
Well, Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me say my thoughts are with the company's employees and families at the time, and we stand ready to support those impacted. Now, let me just outline for the Honourable Gentleman what exactly has happened. We did offer significant support to British Volt through the Automotive Transformation Fund, considerable amount of funding, but entirely reasonably, and it's not something that I expect the Labour Party to understand, that support was conditional on the company receiving private investment as well, which I think is a sensible protection for taxpayers. Unfortunately, that didn't materialise, but I think it's completely wrong to take from that about what else is happening in the North East. Across the North East, there is new investment in the new Envision and Nissan plant, in electric vehicle manufacturing, £1 billion investment in the North East. Just look at what's happening in Teesside or on clean energy. This government is committed to the North East, and it will deliver more jobs and opportunity under this Conservative administration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has long been a friend to business. As Chancellor, he listened to businesses in Stoke-on-Trent Central about their issues. Stoke-on-Trent has a wide range of manufacturing, fabrication and engineering excellence. Does he agree with me that growing these activities is a vital strand of our levelling up ambitions? And may I invite him to revisit my constituency to meet with them?
Why, my honourable friend is an excellent champion for her constituents, and particularly her advanced manufacturing businesses, which I've had the pleasure of visiting with her in the past. It's important that we support those businesses on energy prices, which we are doing through the announcement the Chancellor recently made, particularly with regard to generous support for energy-intensive industries. And indeed, they can also apply for up to £315 million of capital grant funding to help them make the transition to net zero.
Oh, Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I had breast cancer, I had phenomenal nurses. When I had to be rushed to the A&E, the ambulance crew looked after me. Unison, GMB, they're on strike because no one's negotiating with them. Mr. Speaker, for the first time in the Royal College of Nursing history, they have balloted and they are on strike today. I've spoken to the General Secretary of the RCN. She's adamant she wants to end the disputes. She just needs a meeting with the Prime Minister. Will the Prime Minister show leadership and meet with the RCN? Just a simple yes or no.
Mr. Speaker, at the turn of the year, the government wrote to all unions, including the RCN, to invite them for frank, open, honest, two-way dialogue with relevant Secretaries of State. I'm pleased that those meetings are happening in a range of sectors, and I hope that we can find a constructive way through this.
Speaker, as we approach Holocaust Memorial Day, colleagues can sign the early day motion, they can sign the Book of Commitment, they can attend the various commemorative services. I have to report some very sad news to the House, that the well-known Holocaust survivor, Ziggy Schipper, died at the age of 93 in the early hours of this morning. He was a survivor of Auschwitz, Birkenau and Stutthof concentration camps. He spent his life in this country spreading his message of hope to young people. Will my honourable friend join with me in thanking Ziggy for his life, for his message, which is very vitally important as we sit here today. Do not hate.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm very sorry to learn that Ziggy has passed